All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. So we are going to be talking about the Rutgers Plant Diagnostic Lab, but we wanted to give you a couple updates before we really got into that. So we have our program group. We've got Bill Errickson and Steve Rettke out of Monmouth County. Myself, I'm Tim Waller. I'm based in Cumberland County, and we've got some great support staff with Erin and Quinn. So today I'm going to be giving you some of the updates, and then I'm going to hand it over for the majority of today's presentation is going to be Richard Buckley from the Plant Diagnostic Lab. So this is just to bear in mind that the recommendations, if there are any made in the program, they're subject to your state, local requirements, labels of the law, and bear in mind that some of these materials that we discuss may or may not be applicable for whatever area you are joining us from. All right, so a couple of the updates we wanted to give to everyone we talk a lot about growing degree days. We talk a lot about pest emergence, crawler emergence. And with a lot of our scale crawlers, particularly our armored scales, we want to be really on top of when the crawlers emerge. However, with our soft scales, depending on the species, there's a lot more leniency in there. The two that we wanted to bring up that you may start to see crawler emergence, because it's very much going to be beginning here soon, is tulip tree scale and magnolia scale. We're going to see tulip tree scale. We're going to see crawler emergence very soon in southern New Jersey, if not already, and we're going to see this happening throughout the state. However, it's really important that we wait to put down applications. If we think about this in a business context, we're going to get much more bang for our buck when it comes to our treatments. And the reason for that is that these scales have very long periods of hatching, very long periods of crawler vulnerability. And if we wait a little bit, roughly around the September timeframe, when we go in and we do applications, we're going to have a much more impact on them. We're going to talk specifically about these two scales in our next webinar on the 26th. All right, so I just wanted to, if you're following along on the Plant and Pest Advisory, we've made some updates recently related to box tree moth. So this is just a reminder. This is what the caterpillar looks like. This is what the adult form looks like. This is one of the two morphs of the adults. And we did put together this trifold common boxwood pests and diseases. And here's a QR code that will link out to that. But there's been some news in the movement of this pest in the United States. So there's been a couple more quarantines added to the states that already had county-specific quarantines. But there were recently, as little as I think it was 2 weeks ago, maybe a week and a half ago, there were detections in Maryland and detections in Virginia. The QR code here goes to a much more in-depth about the reports of this pest coming in. If you're seeing this pest, please contact me. My contact information is all over the place. My name is Tim Waller. If you look up Rutgers Tim Waller, you can find it. But just bear in mind that we now have in Maryland, it was in a state park, and in Virginia, it was at 4 different locations. Meaning that this pest is hopped over the Appalachian Mountains, just being cognizant that this pest could be coming in sooner than later and being prepared and ready for that. All right, so next big one, particularly here in southern New Jersey right now, and it's going to be the case moving throughout the state. White Prunicola Scale is going to be entering into that period where it's typically the 3rd generation of crawler emergence, but there can be some later crawlers emerging from the 2nd generation. That's kind of this overlapping period. There's a great opportunity to go out, see if you can see crawlers, make your applications based on that. But just bearing in mind, if this is a problem for you, that you're paying attention to this right now. right here, this QR code will take you to the May 27th webinar, in which we go into control, as well as if you head over to our website. And just a reminder to everyone, the website's up. Erin Quinn has been adding a lot of really great information to the website, and we're really trying to make it useful for our practitioners. So next week, our next time on August 26th, we're going to be doing some updates about pests that maybe their second generations coming through or later generations, crawler emergence, etc. I also wanted to talk a little bit about spruce spider mite because we had such a high prevalence of that early this year. And as the season begins to cool, this is something we should be aware of, particularly if it was a problem for you before. We'll talk about our beneficials. Like I said, we're going to talk about magnolia and tulip tree scales, nostoc, nickel deficiency, and the lot. So please join us again on August 26th. All right, so without any further ado, I am going to stop sharing and I'm going to have Rich Buckley go ahead and share his screen.
There we go. I'm unmuted, and hopefully you see what I see.
Looks great.
All right. All right. Good. Well, Tim, thanks for having me. I'm here today to talk maybe a little bit about something different. One of the programs that we run here on the main campus to support the green industry in New Jersey, and I think our program it can be an integral part of a solid IPM program. And I'll also be remiss to leave out that part of the grant funding for this particular program that Tim and Bill and Steve are presenting also provides us with some funding to maintain the diagnostic laboratory in the state. And what you see here are some of our funding sources, Regional IPM Center being an important contributor to our program, and then the National Plant Diagnostic Network, which is a group of land-grant university diagnostic labs where we work together and communicate, about pathogens and pests of consequence, things like box tree moth or laurel wilt or whatever's moving around. We're in close contact. The other thing that this group does is provides us diagnostic support. Those of us in that do this work, some of us are better at certain plants and certain pathogens than others. So we share samples and share information and that kind of thing. And so rather than talking about individual problems, when Tim asked me to participate, I thought, well, what am I going to talk about? Mites and winter injury, because that's been the theme this summer: drought stress and cold temperature stress from January. It's interesting because we've had a really busy year here in the lab, maybe the busiest year in a decade, but a lot of nondescript. I get a lot of little brown twigs that look like they cooked in the winter. So what I'm going to do is talk to you about how to use our services and throw some statistics at you about the kind of things historically we've seen and what plants come in and that sort of stuff. So with that, that's kind of a long and convoluted first slide, but uh-oh. I think you got to make me a host so I can advance the slide. Oh, there we go. All right. Well, our mission is to provide New Jersey citizens with diagnosis of plant health problems. These services are provided in an accurate and timely manner to meet the increasing agriculture and environmental needs of the state. So we were conceived in 1991 by Dr. Ann Gould. She had just started to work at Rutgers, and she had come from the University of Florida, which has maybe one of the biggest diagnostic facilities in the country because of the ports in South Florida and the amount of plant material that's moving in and out of the state. And she thought that we needed a similar kind of program here. And so we started July 7th, 1991, and have been looking at samples ever since. We were conceived as a program for New Jersey residents, but I get samples from 43 different states. Mostly those samples are from the golf turf industry. I've got golf courses all over the country sending us samples, and that's a reflection of Rutgers as a turf grass breeding institution. We also run the biggest fungicide efficacy program for turfgrass diseases in the country. And so we get a lot of attention because of that, and my lab benefits from that. But we also get a lot of ornamental plants from nursery and landscape, in the Northeast. I don't know why someone from Pennsylvania would send me a sample, because the diagnosticians in Pennsylvania are quite competent, but they tell me people from New Jersey send them stuff too. So again, we're participants on a national scale. Even though we're primarily focused on New Jersey, there's two people who work here. Of course, myself. I started first samples we got were July 7th, 1991. So I've been working here for 34 years, which is quite a shock to me. I don't think I lasted 34 months in any job before I started this one. And so I have an assistant, Sabrina Turpak. Many of you have seen her in programs. She's actually been here for 27 years. And so the two of us are responsible for the diagnosis and recommendations that we make. And Sabrina spends most of her time with insect IDs and that sort of stuff, and I'm more of a pathologist here. We do a lot of things. Primarily, our focus is disease and insect pest diagnosis. So most of the samples that come into the laboratory are dysfunctional plants or poorly performing plants with disease and insect pests. I'll throw abiotic or environmental stress into that category. And I'll come back to that in a minute. We do plant weed identifications. I have Kailinga sitting on the bench. I have some pentacetum that seeded into someone's yard, sitting on the bench. We do insect identifications, ticks, bed bugs, all kinds of critters that folks are concerned about come in. Fungus and mold, conchs off of trees. We get the question, is this morel? Can I eat this? These kinds of things. We run the nematode assays. We do pesticide residue testing and resistance screening on certain things. And we'll do anything, other services by contract. And I'll talk about some of that stuff. But if you have a need, we visit sites. You got a snake you need ID'd, we'll figure out how to get it ID'd. We'll work with you to solve whatever issue that you may have, even if it's just me finding a person that you can talk to in another state or in another program. So again, we have a wide range of services that we provide, but again, primarily disease and insect pest diagnosis. Most of it's that. So this is what it looks like in the summer in the laboratory. I should Photoshop out the Diet Coke there, because I don't think you're supposed to drink Coke in the laboratory. But the number of samples that we get in season, sometimes is overwhelming. And we get a lot of different types of plant material. You can see nursery stock, you see landscape plants, the Tupperwares, usually have golf turf in them. So again, we do a lot of different types of things here, with a lot of different plants. Now, this particular graph is, and this is a calendar year graph, and this is the submissions by month, since we started. This is every sample that we've ever looked at. And you can see that, the summer months, of course, are the busiest months. It's the busiest months for all of us in the green industry. And, again, it's reflected in our sample submissions. Note that you see some months with giant numbers. These are outlier months generally, and those numbers come with some of the survey work that we do. We do a lot of work with, we've done work with the Forest Service on a national level. We do a lot of work with the State Department of Ag in the Cooperative Agriculture Pest Surveys, and that kind of thing. And so July, this one in the middle there, we might have got 1,000 traps to look at that month. So again, we are involved in a lot of different programs here. Here's another example of the number of samples that we get on a yearly basis. And you can see here, on the years where we have rather large numbers are all associated with years. I remember 2001, we were doing Phytophthora ramorum surveys with the State Department of Ag. We've done bacterial leaf scorch, Xylella surveys. When 1 week we got 1,200 oak samples, 1 year. And so what we generally get, is in this, 17, 1,800 samples a year range. And if you add all this up, that's something like 66,000 plants, for disease and insect pest diagnosis. Turf samples, mostly golf course turf has been in the 400s. I think we're above that this year because of grass on a golf course putting green. I know you guys don't have to deal with it. Mowed at 1/10 of an inch really doesn't like it when it gets hot. These are plants from Northern Europe, and they have a real hard time getting through a summer like we've had. And it's kind of good. We're going to get some more 90s this week, and it'll kill some more putting greens. So that's always a good thing for me here. Ornamental plants, the 600 range, that it's pretty consistent from year to year, with the ornamentals. And so the rest of the samples generally that we have are made up by survey work that we're doing with the state. Most of our work is for commercial entities, landscape, nursery, arborists. We are really a turf grass and ornamentals type facility rather than a vegetable or field crop fruit. We get that stuff, but not anywhere near the numbers that we get, of the, what I would call urban agriculture. So plant samples, it's about 76%, 85% commercial. The identifications, 80% commercial. So that being said, we do offer our services to the research group here at Rutgers, and so we work with some of the programs, in blueberries or in basil and the breeding programs, helping them out. And we do get residential clients. Anyone can walk into the lab. We're open to the public, and it's not necessarily something that folks like to pay for. But we get people coming in with a lot of different types of plant problems. And so again, mostly commercial, but open to the public. Plant samples is 67% of the work. The identifications, and this also includes survey traps, is 18%, and the nematode program is 15%. Most of our nematode work either comes from the blueberry IPM folks or from golf turf, landscape plants. We don't necessarily see it in nurseries. We don't see a lot of nematodes. Occasionally we'll get foliar nematodes in perennials, or I remember having Buddleia with foliar nematodes. And it's funny, I rode my bicycle past that particular nursery, and all the Buddleia were on sale that day. So I I I remember that particular situation. And but anyway, nematodes is something that we do. We have worked with nurseries that are shipping bald and burlap trees into Canada. They had to be certified, root knot nematode free. So we've done some of that work too. But again, primarily most of our work is in plants. 39% turf grass, which is an interesting figure, because it's at 68,000 plant samples, 39%, something like 25,000 cup cutter size plugs of dead grass. I've arguably looked at more dead grass in a laboratory than any other person in the world. And I don't play golf, and I honestly don't care that much about grass. But I know dead grass pretty well. Ornamental plants, 52%. And again, landscape, nursery, arborists are our significant clients. Next to the turfgrass industry, the arborists are our biggest client group. I think largely because I worked and taught our licensed tree expert, or what used to be called certified tree expert, and ISA training since I started. So we have a lot of friends in the tree care group. And then we got 9% field crops and fruits and vegetables. We're seeing a few more vegetables this season. We've turned over a lot of the faculty and staff in the vegetable IPM program in the last couple of years. So we're helping to train some of the new scouts and that kind of thing by solving their problems. So again, we're looking at all kinds of plants, but New Jersey being an urban agriculture state, is turf and ornamentals focus. So that's that. Just a little bit about like the types of plants that come in. Every year we mine the database, and again, this is calendar year 2024. We haven't added to this in 2025 yet. We usually do that stuff in, the December. But I'll tell you, we're not getting a lot of oaks this year. You see that number 3885. That's because of bacterial leaf scorch in the oaks, and the survey work and the research work we did with Dr. Ann Gould. That number's a little convoluted, but if you go down the list, you see my favorite plant, boxwood. I know Tim shares the same affinity and love for dead boxwoods that I do. And 1319, we have had a couple of boxwood blights this season. Again, we haven't seen box tree moth. I think we will eventually. But boxwood is a trouble plant for us. And you see spruce, you see rhododendron. It's an interesting thing because I look at lists like this and I go, are these the plants that have the most problems? Right? Or are these the plants that everybody has in their landscape? And so I remember a county agent. We had a county agent, Deborah Smith Fiola, and she used to do a talk these are the top 10 insects in New Jersey. And then it would be, the next sentence would be, because these are the top 10 plants used in New Jersey. And so, again, you got to take these kinds of lists with a grain of salt. But if I called Sabrina on a day I was off and said, "What do we got?" Odds are really high she would say an arborvitae or a boxwood. So, you guys in the nursery industry thinking about what you're growing and selling, it's kind of reflected here in a little in a rudimentary way. So again, a lot of different kinds of plant material, but we see certain things a lot, and so that's that. The nematode assay program, mostly turf grass, and then the fruit IPM folks. Not a lot of nematode issues in ornamentals. Again, root knots, foliar nematodes are out there, but we don't see a lot of it in the laboratory. Diagnostics, abiotic stress, 27%, right? Disease agents, 35%. Insect pests, 5%. And again, we have the nematodes and the IDs in here, but if you take those out, like, because that's a different type of a test, we're looking at about 40% abiotic stress, right? And so I like to point this out because I write a lot of letters and say we don't find a disease or an insect pest on your sample, but you're growing an arborvitae, and we just had, like, an extreme rainfall event, and it's 90 degrees, and that's probably why it's dead. It's that kind of thing. And so I think that a lot of folks are uncomfortable with a diagnosis of an abiotic stress and environmental stress, because everybody, it's like you want to know what you have so you can take your medicine, and so I like to point this out because it's actually good news, because you can save money in pesticide applications, and reduce your environmental footprint, by getting a proper diagnosis. And if it's an abiotic stress, it might be just changing the way you water and a little pruning or repotting some stuff, rather than drenching some expensive and unnecessary pesticides. So I think part of this is in a good IPM program, knowing what you have and knowing when to make the applications is really fundamental, right? And so we're here to help you make those decisions, and so you can't rule out no insect or disease, and that kind of thing is important to you. We look at data, and this is turfgrass data, just to kind of give you an idea of how we use our database. Every year I report to the golf turf industry, the number of samples that we get and the kinds of diseases that we see. Right. And so when we get into the winter, like, talk show circuit is what I call it, what we try to focus our lectures on are the problems that are frequent or especially damaging, or that we're waiting to see. Like, we want to create awareness about, like, box tree moth, and so what you're looking at here is a disease called summer patch, and is the most common diagnosis that we have. And again, this is an interesting kind of a dynamic with this kind of data too, because I have people say, if you want disease A, send it to Penn State. If you want disease B, send it to Cornell. If you want disease C, send it to Rutgers, implying that we have a bias. But one of the things that we do here is we have a standard operating protocol to rule out bias. So I'm pretty confident in saying that the kinds of samples that we get and the diseases that we diagnose, are largely things that are difficult in the field. And if you look at the data of, for instance, insect pests being only 5%, it's not because there's only 5% of the problems are insect pests is because you guys can see them. You know, I had a partner here years ago, Karen Cockley, and she used to go, insects are our friends, because we get a sample and then the critters are crawling all over the counter, right? So again, like, we're here and we solve a lot of problems that are difficult symptom wise or sign wise in the field, you know, for the practitioners. And it's reflected in this kind of data. I know you guys are nursery people and you probably, you know, you're like, what's he talking about, turf diseases? But again, it's just trying to make a point about the kind of output that we give. You know, it's based on the kind of samples that are coming in. And usually those are the tough to describe and tough to identify issues. Now, we are a total cost recovery program. You know, as you saw in the title slide, I get some support through grant funding institutions, mostly through the National Institute of Food and Agriculture and the USDA. You know, we get a little bit of support internally from Rutgers now. We hadn't historically. So we charge a fee. Most samples are $50. We charge out of state 100, you know, because we're New Jersey focused. We have special tests and services that will, you know, charge more for. Some of the virus work is more costly. If we do pesticide residue testing, for instance, if you want me to find glyphosate residue in a plant, you know, that's going to cost us, you know, in the $450 range, you know. So circumstantially, we might have higher prices, but most of the time it's $50 a sample. And you know, that's again, uh, I don't think it's that expensive. Um, my colleagues in other states, you know, Penn State's free, you know, Michigan's $16. You know, it's a reflection of us not getting internal support, but it's also, you know, if you want to think of it in terms of, I'm about to spend $3,000 on a fungicide, $50 to know what I'm spraying is a pretty good investment, right? And so again, you know, we're making money. We you know, and again, nonprofit, other income sources. We do lectures for fees. We work in the Office of Continuing Professional Education and regional extension programs. You know, that you know, you'll see all of us, Bill and Steve and Tim, talking about plant problems. You know, work with professional associations all over the country. You know, private suppliers, companies like SiteOne and Harrell's, and, you know, any number of companies like that. We work with them. We do grant programs with you know, the Department of Agriculture and the Cooperative Agriculture Pest Survey, and again, that kind of stuff. You know, I talked about in the beginning. So again, we need to uh pay our own salaries and pay our benefits and pay for all of our overhead. And we do that by providing, you know, what are traditionally free services, and services that you can get in the county for free, you know, and from you know, our experts out there. But again, if there's something that needs extra testing or specific kinds of testing, or there's controversial issues versus with the economics, you know, we're there for you. So again, we do a lot of different stuff. I mentioned the National Plant Diagnostic Network. Again, this is a program that was started in 2002, really about agriculture biosecurity, and it's sort of turned into a support network for APHIS and PPQ, and then you know, a regional support network for us and for the other diagnosticians in the other states. We meet once a month and talk about the problems that we have, talk about protocols for diagnosis, talk about new things that we're seeing and that sort of stuff. So welcome you to go to the website and just check it out. I think what I like to say with this is, again, it's a larger program that has a national focus as well as New Jersey. So we're up to our neck in other diagnosticians so that we can get it right for you. Again, we work with the APHIS PPQ and the State Department of Ag, and you can see my assistant took that. We were walking into a spotted lanternfly quarantine zone right at the beginning when we first found those critters. Sitting on Monmouth Beach yesterday, and spotted lanternflies were on the beach too, and the seagulls wouldn't eat them. So I thought, seagulls eat everything. But again, we're a cooperative venture here, so it's not just me saying that you have drought stress. We're backed up by a lot of different folks, and I want to stress that point. That dude with the long hair, you don't know what he's talking about, but I got a lot of other people helping me. So that's important. We're looking for stuff like this. I love this picture. I had to throw this in because I've actually seen box tree moth, but it was in the Netherlands. And Sabrina and I were there with a study abroad program. And we were walking in the morning, doing a little fitness, walking before we had to go on the field trips for the day. And we took a bunch of pictures of these boxwoods. I was like, what the hell is that? And then when I started seeing box tree moths, particularly our friends at Ohio State, they put some, I was like, oh, there's the curlicues. And look, that's what these things were. But again, we're working with the National Plant Diagnostic Network and with APHIS to help track this stuff and make sure that when these kinds of things come into the state, we get an accurate diagnosis, that it's confirmed by the proper people, and that it's the information is provided to you guys in a timely manner so that you'll know what it looks like and you'll know what to do. And again, Bill and Steve and Tim do an excellent job of giving you that kind of information, right? We also work with the Cooperative Agriculture Pest Survey, and that's a program that the State Department of Ag writes grants to the USDA to survey for insects of concern. We've done surveys for a number of different things, a lot of agriculture pests in this program, but we get samples that look like this. I probably have 500 of them sitting in the other room, and we have to identify the target pests on traps. And I don't even identify them. If we think we have a suspect, we circle it on the trap and I send it to someone at the USDA and the Smithsonian Institute to confirm it, right? So there's multiple levels of confirmation in this stuff. But again, we do a lot of this work. Well, I should say Sabrina does a lot of this work because it's identifying a little brown moth stuck to a sticky card is challenging to say the least. And so again, it's just something that we do. So here's some factoids. As of December of 2024, you want to add about 1,500 samples to this number now, 66,782 samples. Sabrina and I have done 4,311 talks. Again, that number is probably another 150 or more low. We've been doing public presentations for a long time. And 5.8 million in revenue, and that's a year ago, so probably a couple 100,000 more now. Clearly, Rutgers hasn't paid me that much, but it's kept the program running. Your guys' support from the green industry has been good. We've had a successful program to date, and we hopefully we'll get some more. I feel funny saying stuff like that because when it's a good year for me, it's a bad year for you guys because I'm the dead plant guy, right? And so that's that. So that's kind of what we're doing. The next little bit here is how do you do it, right? how do you send a sample? And this particular picture is not the right way to do it. Um, uh, that's a real sample. The bizarre thing about this sample was I found the fungal fruiting bodies of the leaf spot disease on one of those tiny pieces of leaf, and they actually gave them the right diagnosis for this. But we continually we get like 4-inch twigs in the lab all the time, and I got people that don't even know what plant it is, like, and like, so the thing I want to point out is proper sampling, and I'm going to say this a bunch of times, is really important, right? So we have a website. That's me and Sabrina, and I just got updated. So, click on the link, and all the information about how to send sample, cost structure, how to mail, how to drop off is all there. All the services offered. Um, and so the first thing you need to do is get a submission form, right? So there's a submission forms online. There's instructions on the submission forms about how to take a sample and how to package it and ship it. You can again mail them or deliver them directly to the lab. You can call us. We have an email. We'd like you to send us photographs with the samples. That helps me a lot. Seeing what you're seeing on the site, your description of the problem might not be the same way I would describe it, right? So again, we have email, phone. Someone's usually in the lab between 9 and 4 every day. You're very likely to get one of our student helpers on the phone, but again, we're available to you. Um, uh, the website, just to show you the sample of submission forms, or just click through the link. Um, and essentially it's fill out the form, collect the right sample, and package and send it. There are 7 different types of forms, because the forms ask you questions about what's going on with your plant, and the questions are specific toward the types of situations, landscape and home grounds, versus commercial nursery. A little bit different things are going on there, so we want to know, the circumstances. Circumstantial evidence is a huge part of making a good diagnosis. It's not just throwing it in a machine and getting your blood test and you got high cholesterol. I want to know how many pieces of bacon you eat every morning. And so again, the forms are specific to the problems. And so they'll tell you what kind of samples. I think what's important about sampling is that the better the sample that we have, the more likely you're going to get a high quality diagnosis. I'm going to write a letter for everybody who sends something in, but I want something that represents the symptoms on the plant, represents the severity of the disease in the field, and it's got to be in good condition. Like, dead plants don't work that well, right? So, we don't need this brown twig. What I need is the main stem so I can see that canker, right? So the more plant material that you can send, the better. Working with nursery growers, I get whole plants, and that's great, and so that's an important thing to keep in mind. You have something like this is a needle cast disease in spruce. A branch works really well for this because the fungal fruiting bodies are here on last year's growth, and we can identify it. It's an accurate representation of the problem. If you send me a picture of the tree, I'll understand the severity in the field as well, right? So again, that kind of stuff helps us make better recommendations, helps us understand what you're seeing in the field and how it's spreading in your nursery. Sometimes patterns tell us a lot. We like whole plants. Again, and I get a lot of the, guys will just cut this brown off and send it to me, and then you get a letter. It's an arborvitae. It was hot, but having the roots, we pop it out of the roots. This is a Phytophthora crown and root rot issue. You can see that half of the root system is crummy, but I'm not going to know unless I have it, right? I got a sample today of a branch of a maple, and on the submission form, they said, we think it has a girdling root. Well, what do you want me to tell you about the roots if all I got is a few leaves, So the plant material matters a lot, right? Dead plants tell no tales. So if you send in dead stuff, I can grow all kinds of fungi, none of which are probably the cause of the problem, right? So what I like to have something is in decline, right? You can see in the middle here, and these are plants that we inoculated with Phytophthora years ago to do some fungicide work. And interestingly enough, there's 360 of them, and I killed them all. And the only good data we got out of it was this slide that showed the progression in our rating system in the program. But like, here's the plant that I want, this one that's just starting to fail. And you know, I can look at the root zone and I can see it, right? We want to have complete information concerning the problem. The more I know, the better I can help, right? So the submission forms, again, ask questions about, you know, what are you seeing, and how many plants, and when did it start, and how long they've been in the pots, and how are you watering, and what kind of pesticides are you using, and all of these things help. You know, I'm sure Tim has talked about the disease triangle. Well, what you're doing with the submission form is communicating the environmental and the plant related stuff. I'll find the pathogen, but I need some guidance based on what's going on in the field. This is a particular sample that I got from a golf course superintendent. I don't recommend this fungicide approach, but everybody knows what this dude meant. And I realized that he sprayed it like 30 times before it's coming into me. But again, you know, the more information we have, the better. We like to see the symptoms, right, on individual plants and plant parts, but also across the field. So digital images help us. They show us the site condition and patterns and that kind of thing. Pictures are worth 1,000 words, right? And everybody that sells arborvitae likes this photograph. You know, it's how many are there? Like 40 of them or something. And so photos help a lot, you know. And so you sent me if you send me one of those arborvitaes and this picture, it's like I'm on the field as a site consultant. So again, it's really advantageous. Packing and shipping, right? So we get things in the mail. Again, you're welcome to drop them off. Collect samples before applying pesticides if you can. Sturdy box, secure the sample. Avoid packaging samples in plastic. You know, we want to rot them here in a controlled way. If it's in plastic and it takes a week to get to us, I'll open a bag and it's just slime, right? And keep the paperwork separate, because I've had paperwork that was slimed and you couldn't read it, you know, and that's a mess. So this is golf samples, but it makes a good example. We call these turf burgers. They wrap the plugs in turf. So if you had a nursery sample, shake off the potting soil, maybe wrap the roots in a plastic bag or tin foil, roll the plant up in newspaper, secure it in a bag, you know, make sure everything's labeled appropriately, you know, and make sure it's sturdy, because like this guy tried to follow the rules but didn't secure the plant material in the bag, and it just you know, that's 4 samples. I don't know which one's which. You know, and we get that from nurseries too, man, that everything's just a mess in the box. And, you know, you have good intentions, but we can't solve a problem, or we can't be specific about what plant it is if it's just turned into a box full of dirt, you know, or soil and plant parts. So, you know, think and be mindful of how you send stuff. This is a good example of how it works, you know, with a good sample, tin foil, secure in the box, photographs, you know, even commentary in a letter. You know, again, I'm using turf samples because they're just good pictures that illustrates, but this could be any ornamental as well, right? Send samples early in the week. If you send them on Friday, they'll sit in the post office, right? Use our street address. In some of the old forms, there's a P.O. box. That's a mess. And listen, if you use our street address, we highly recommend that you use UPS or FedEx, because if you use the U.S. Postal Service, it'll go to the main campus post office and then to the Cook campus post office and then to us, and an overnight express mail might take a week, right? But UPS walks in every morning and hands us stuff. The guy thinks it's a joke because there's soil drop coming out of the bag, out of the boxes and stuff. So again, you can mail that way. You can also find us online. You can see location and contact information. There's turn-by-turn instructions. You can click a hot link to Google Maps and drive it up. There's maps and everything. Again, we like it when you drop stuff off. A lot of nursery growers drive stuff in, and then I can see you and talk to you about the problem, and we can consult a little bit in person. And again, that's always helpful. You're welcome to come here with your plant material. All samples are subject to standard operating protocols. We do a lot of work with microscopes and with incubation and moist chambers, staining techniques, traditional plant pathology, isolating pathogens, and then we have special tests as well. Most of the stuff that we use is well researched and well used protocols. All of us put our protocols on this wiki page, and all the diagnosticians share our recipes for things and what we do. So again, we're not making this up, right? We're working within a science-based information system. We're getting to the point where we're using we have a lot of antibody-based test kits for viruses and stuff. I don't have a real-time PCR, but we're starting to do high throughput gene sequencing on samples. It's kind of interesting. The cost of that stuff has come down. And so we're getting more rigorous, and we're getting to the point where the genetic testing, we can give you 100% certainty, where in the past it might be me looking through a microscope, and identifying a pathogen and that kind of thing. So again, we're constantly trying to improve our output, improve our technology, and we use standard protocols that are industry and diagnostician accepted. So again, just letting you know, we respond with a letter that we send via email, and in these letters, in the most succinct way possible, I try to outline the problem and recommend timing and pesticides, insecticides or fungicides, miticides, whatever. We try to find efficacy data. With ornamentals, it's not always there. So sometimes you just get a list of things that are labeled. But again, we try to provide you with the most up-to-date and current science-based information that we can find, so that we can help solve your problem in a timely manner. Just to kind of wrap this up, sample response time, 34 years, 66,000 samples, 86% is in less than 3 days. Our average response time is it's 2.29 days, right? And the samples that take a little bit longer mean that they take a little bit more extensive testing. You're really looking at 94% within a week, and so some things take longer. The gene sequencing stuff we do takes 10 days, so again, we go as fast as we can. We know it's important to you. We want to give you science-based information and be as accurate as possible. And so within a good IPM program, proper diagnostics, don't guess, man. Get it tested, consult with your experts, and together we can go down the golden road. And never mind. Thank you very much. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Well, thank you very much, Rich. We're going to go ahead and stop the recording for the video.